Hello, and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I am your host, Keri. I'm sorry, I forgot to do the intro video. That's okay. We're just going to jump right into it. I surprised myself. It's like, wait, what's happening? There's no video. Um, it also appears that Cheeky Mare is here. Uh, I'm not sure why, but hello, Cheeky. Give it up for Cheeky, one of our mods. Okay, rough start this morning. That's okay. I'm back. Um, Thank you guys for all the people who wish me well on Friday. I had a minor outpatient surgery inside my cheek, had some stitches, and was gonna waited till the last minute. That happened on Thursday, and I was gonna try to do the show on Friday, but I would have been talking like this the whole time, so not to touch the cheek, and I couldn't do it. So we ended up saying, okay, we're just gonna wait and just do a Monday show. So it's much better today. I think it's healing nicely, and I appreciate all the well wishes. Thank you so much. So welcome. If it's your first time here, this is a live show that we do on Mondays and Fridays. Talk about what's in the news, what's on our mind, and sometimes we do specific topics. And I know some of you guys are online a lot, like I am, and have been following the recent just outright media war on Libs of TikTok, and you're familiar with it. And others maybe are not online as much, and so you haven't seen it. So we're just gonna look through what's currently happening to Libs of TikTok and the Libs of TikTok founder, Chaya Raichik. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In the media, because I think it's a good illustration of a attempted smear job and cancel campaign, cancel mob on a large scale. And sometimes it helps to look at the ones that are happening on a large scale because it helps you understand it better if you encounter something like this on a smaller scale in a social group or hobby group or in your employment, or someone basically trying to turn public opinion or opinion within that group against you and to get you canceled, um, based on lies, based on projection, basically based on having so-called wrong opinions, usually opinions that are against social justice or woke ideology. That's what'll cause it. If you let it be known that you're for individualism and you're for actual liberalism, and you're actually against racism, you're not down with this new kind of racism that they call anti-racism, then you may become the subject of one of these smear campaigns. So we're going to take a look at it. Let me just say hello. I see a lot of regulars in the chat. Sorry to keep you waiting. Hey, good to see you guys here. We're also simulcasting on Rumble. Been doing that for a month or so now. So if you are not a fan of YouTube and some of their censorious policies, and you're already over at Rumble, you can always watch us there as well. And then before I pull up the topic for today, I did have one announcement I forgot to make, which is that we are doing book club on March 7th, which is a Thursday at 6:00 Central. And we are currently reading a book by Neil Shenvi and Pat Sawyer. I usually have it here on the desk, but because I've had it out with me reading it around the house, I don't have it. But we're going to be discussing this book on Thursday, March 7th. I've been mentioning it in every video, so hopefully you've had time to get a copy and we can have a conversation together. If one of the mods wants to drop a link to the book in the chat, that would be awesome. I'm interviewing those guys this week, and if you have questions for them, you can put those questions in the comments below this video, and I'll make sure to ask those during the interview, which will coincide sometime around our book club discussion. So that's the book club info. Okay. I assume most people are now familiar with Libs of TikTok. She's doing a great job, I think. She's doing a great job at exposing the hypocrisy on the left, at exposing some of the more unsavory elements of social justice and woke ideology. And all she really does, if you're not familiar with her, all she really does is post videos. She started off by posting videos under this account. She was anonymous. She was protecting her identity, so she was going by Libs of TikTok, and she just was taking videos from TikTok, people in their own words, in their own videos, and putting them online for people to see what's happening there. There are a lot of parents who don't have that app. I don't have that app. I've created one, but I don't actually use it or have it on my phone or anything. And there are a lot of videos, as it turns out, of teachers, of educators who are proudly and gleefully and sometimes hatefully bragging in their TikTok videos about how they are pushing gender ideology on their students in classrooms. And so she has highlighted a lot of those videos. Most of the time, she just takes the clip, puts it right to her Twitter account, and then because people were shocked at what they were seeing, her account went viral. She is, I think at this point, she's over she's almost at 3 million followers. Here, I'm going to play a recent video. This is from yesterday, just to give you an idea if you're not familiar with her. Okay. Now, what you're about to see is a TikToker who goes by the name Fuzzy or Mall. Very popular TikToker, has over 500,000 followers, and she is a substitute teacher. And she does video after video on her TikTok account, introducing children to things like the polyamory flag and the pansexual flag and the non-binary flag, and what do these things mean, and introducing children to this idea that they can change their sex, or that they might be one of these different sexualities or different gender identities. So she is exactly the kind of teacher I would call a groomer. She's an ideological groomer. She is grooming children into this cult of belief, this gender ideology cult. So as it turns out, Fuzzy just lost her job. Now, she's been featured on Libs of TikTok many times. And it's part of the reason her channel is so popular, because what's funny is that a lot of times these people, if they get featured in Libs of TikTok, they complain about it, of course, but then they also gain a huge following from woke people who want to support them. So Libs of TikTok is the whole reason that her channel sort of became as popular as it did. She was recently apparently let go by the school as a substitute teacher. And so she took to TikTok and Instagram to make this video blaming Libs of TikTok for her firing. You'll notice in this video, there's, she's not taking any accountability for, hey, maybe it was within the school's rights to say the kind of material you're putting out online to the public is inappropriate for someone who is shaping young minds, for someone who parents are entrusting with their children every day to learn about to learn how to read and to write and to learn about science. And this is not appropriate for the classroom. There's no accountability. There's no kind of acknowledgement that my actions possibly resulted in this consequence, right? No, all of the blame is placed squarely on Libs of TikTok, which is what seems to be happening a lot, is everyone wants to blame her. And so you'll see she starts off this video by saying she has been hate crimed. Here we go.
I was recently hate crimes for being queer. And as a result of me being hate crimes for being queer, it ultimately led to me being fired from my job as a high school substitute.
Wait, I'm going to rewind that just a second. The beginning's hard to hear. She says, I was recently hate crimed for being queer. Now, if you're just watching this on TikTok, you may be like, oh, what happened? She got fired. You got fired. I think we're stretching the meaning of hate crime pretty thin at this point. How did you get hate crimed? I was fired. Okay, here we go.
I was recently hate crimes for being queer. And as a result of me being hate crimes for being queer, it ultimately led to me being fired from my job as a high school substitute teacher. I hate making content like this. I love making people laugh and smile and forget about all their troubles. I love helping people feel comfortable in their bodies and always preach that there's nothing ever wrong with being you, and that you should always identify and do the things that make you happy and feel most like you.
I'm going to stop this for just a second. Now, this may seem like an aside to some people, and it may seem like, oh, this isn't important. Why are you nitpicking on this in this video? But I don't think it's a small thing. I think this is a big thing, actually. A lot of these ideological groomers who are grooming children in classrooms into the cult of social justice, and specifically into the gender ideology part of social justice, they like to say what she just said. They like to say, all I'm doing is telling kids to do what makes you happy, and says it with a smile. Just do what makes you happy. That's this to me. There's a huge problem with this. Culturally, we've accepted somehow, this has become common to hear people say something like that and not think about what it means. And it's just accepted as something positive. Oh, telling kids the best way to live is to do what makes them happy. That's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not moral instruction. First of all, you're a teacher. It's not your job in a public school to be giving moral instruction anyway. But it's not good moral instruction. There are some people for whom abusing people, even killing people, makes them happy. These are extremes, yes, the killing people one, but the abusing people one, no, there's lots of people who love that. They love doing that. It's not good moral advice. Do what the heart says to do. No, the heart is wrong. The heart can deceive. What makes you happy? There are people who publicly say they get off on hurting others. They enjoy it. They enjoy harassing people online and doing horrible things. That makes them happy. So I know this is an aside, just a quick aside, but this is one of my big pet peeves with culture at the moment, which is these sort of innocuous sounding platitudes that people say without really thinking about what they mean and how they're passing this down. And we just sort of, as a society, where I guess we just don't question it. Like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Just, yeah, you're telling kids to do what makes you happy. No, first of all, that's wrong. G-Man, thank you for the super chat. G-Man says, for $2, says her job was genocided. I'm surprised she didn't go there yet. Okay, thanks for letting me make that aside. Let's continue with her video, because she gets into blaming Libs of Tik Tok at the end, and she loses her smile. You're gonna see the mask kind of drop where she gets very vicious and angry.
I love learning about my community, and I love helping educate others about my community too. What happened to me wasn't fair to me or to my students that I helped make a better and safer environment for every single day. Right now in America, queer teachers are under attack and are constantly being targeted and kicked out of the classrooms for being who they are and for helping students feel welcomed for who they are.
Honey, it's not for being who you are. It's for indoctrinating children into gender ideology. It's for doing something inappropriate. There's no rule against a teacher being gay, or it shouldn't even come up. The schools shouldn't even, there's no reason for them to know that. Maybe if you're hanging out socially with the principal, the other teachers, maybe, of course, but there's definitely not a reason for your students to know and for you to be talking about it all the time like you are and bringing it into the classroom and indoctrinating children. That's the difference. It's the behavior. It's the behavior. It's not who you are. It's what you're doing in the classroom.
I hope that by telling my story, I can make other queer teachers who have gone through similar experiences feel less alone, and that I'm able to use this as an opportunity to say goodbye to my students that I didn't get the chance to say goodbye to because that opportunity was taken away from me by a hateful, miserable person who had too much time on their hands. For us to start, we have to go back a whole year ago to when I was being targeted by hateful extremist groups and really blew up online. Particularly by that one cis lady who was accused of inciting bomb threats against schools, libraries, and hospitals, and who also just got appointed to an advisor position on the Oklahoma.
Look how angry she is. Look how angry she is right here. Who also just got appointed. Look at that. This is who this woman really is. If you've seen her TikToks, there's something creepy about them because it's over the top exuberance, artificial exuberance. and an artificial smile and weird affectation. And I think it just strikes something in your gut. It does in mine anyway, that like something's a little off. There's nothing wrong with joy and laughter and smiling and having fun, but it's something about it seems very false. And every once in a while you see her get like this, and I feel like, to me anyway, I know this is subjective, I'm like, there it is. There's your anger at the people you feel are persecuting you. I'm going to back it up here just for a second, because she says it's the fault of hateful extremists, and she puts up a Libs of TikTok post that had featured one of her videos. So she's off the bat calling Libs of TikTok hateful extremists. And then she goes on to levy some of the accusations that have been made, the false allegations that have been made against Libs of TikTok and Chaya Raichik, the founder. But that's how these smear mobs work, is that because the press, the propaganda arm, has done their job and they've done the smear articles, then you can get individual lunatics like this in the social justice movement who pull those headlines and say, see, look what she's been accused of. Look what she's been accused of, right? Okay, and we're going to get into what she's been accused of in a second, but I just wanted to rewind it to this part where she tells us why she got hate crimed, meaning lost her job.
I was being targeted by hateful extremist groups and really blew up online.
And you blew up.
Particularly by that one cis lady who is accused of inciting bomb threats against schools, libraries, and hospitals, and who also just got appointed to an advisor position on the Oklahoma Educational State Department's Library Committee, which is a whole nother mess that we're not going to get into right now.
Okay. So you get to see her emoting all over the screen, and blaming this on Libs of TikTok, her firing. Okay. That one was just shared yesterday. I believe actually Fuzzy, whatever her name is on TikTok, she shared it a week or two ago, but I just saw it on the Libs of TikTok account yesterday. And it's not uncommon. There are constantly, it seems increasingly, I'm seeing more mainstream news articles, the cathedral, the propaganda arm of social justice, putting out articles trying to target Libs of TikTok, trying to target Chaya Raichik, and blaming her for things she has nothing to do with, like the things we just saw in that video, accusing her of bomb threats that she has not made or told anyone to do or supported or said are cool or has any attachment to whatsoever. They've tried to blame her when they get fired like this and say it's her fault I was fired. She has no say in what the school chooses to do. She highlighted your video. If your video had something to do with you being fired, you made it. You made the video. They've also tried to accuse her now. It's reaching a new level where they're trying to accuse her of being a murderer. They've accused her of being a terrorist. That there was a whole round of the press putting out headlines trying to say, and I'll show you some articles, Libs of TikTok terrorism, Libs of TikTok terrorism. Now they're putting out articles saying Libs of TikTok murderer, Libs of TikTok caused the death of a non-binary student. That's the new one. So here we go. Let's pull up one of these. Let's see. Actually, let's pull up the bomb threat one first, because this was a while back that they were doing. It's almost like they all the little propaganda agents in the press, they get the same memo and then they all do headlines at the same time with repeating certain phrases. So there was a time when they were all doing headlines accusing Libs of TikTok of being behind bomb threats. So this one is just one example of those, and this is from February 7th. There have been a lot of these, those I was thinking of like 6 months ago when this was happening a lot. This one's more recent. Okay, so NBC News, the headline is, after Libs of TikTok posted, at least 21 bomb threats followed. Okay, really? I posted also and then bomb threats happen. Did you post it? NBC News posted. Do you see what my point? What do her posts have to do with bomb threats? Okay, so let's go through and see. The FBI and local law enforcement said that bomb threats across the country have tied up government resources, even when they turn out to be hoaxes, which is the majority of the time. We'll read just a little bit of this one and see. Oh, dude, how do they manage to link this to her? Okay, last March, police in Coralville, Iowa, investigated a bomb threat targeting a junior high school. Authorities brought in specially trained dogs to sniff for explosives and started looking into why someone might try to target the community's teachers and students. Law enforcement quickly determined that the threat was a hoax. Detective Hannah Dvorak from the Coralville Police Department arrived at a theory. Quote, "It appears this all stems from a post made earlier this week by Chaya Raichik and her Libs of Tik Tok account." This is what the detective is saying, okay? So you've got the detective saying this too. This is what she wrote in a report to her superiors. Raichik, 29, is not accused of making any bomb threats in Iowa. Oh, shocker, because your headlines all make it seem like she is. She's not accused of making any bomb threats in Iowa or anywhere else. But about a day and a half before authorities responded to the threat at the Northwest Junior High, Raichik had posted that the school offers a, quote, pornographic book in its library that teaches kids about gay sex. It does. And if you haven't looked at some of these books, we've looked at them on this channel. And if you're a person who stumbled on this video and you're like, "Oh, there's no pornographic books in the schools," you need to go and look up the books, like Genderqueer, for example. You need to go and look them up and then come back to us and tell us what you see in that book. So all she did is do a post saying, "Hey, look at this book. This is available in a library." And now somehow that makes her responsible for a hoax, anonymous bomb threat. Quote, "These are the books they're giving to your kids to read in schools," she wrote on the social media platform X. "People have frequently targeted the book in question. This book is Gay, a coming out guide for LGBTQ teens, with book bans going back years." Let me just stop you here. This is propaganda. There's no book ban. NBC News, you're supposed to be journalists. This is why we call you guys propaganda. There's no book ban. You can get this book in any bookstore. You can get it online. You can go to any public library and get it. What we're saying is it's not appropriate for children. Children don't have unfettered access to the internet in schools. They should not have unfettered access to anything that's ever been published or written in a school. Sexually inappropriate material is censored on their internet browsers. It should not be allowed in the public school libraries. We don't put Penthouse in the public school libraries, and yet nobody at NBC News is saying, "Why is Penthouse banned?" It's banned. It's not banned. It's not. It's just not in a public school library. So this here tells me you guys are deceivers. I mean, as if your headline about her didn't already, but there we go. The Coralville detective wrote in her report that one of Raichik's supporters could have had a role in the bomb threat. Really? Who? Which supporter? And what does that mean? A supporter? Does it mean some random person who follows her online? But I bet they don't even have that, or they would say that. I bet they don't even have any. I bet they have no idea who it is. That's most of these bomb threats we heard about, like some of the ones at hospitals, they had no idea who did it. And there are people saying, sounds like something a leftist activist would do, to call in a threat so it gets blamed on people on the other side. Like it's sort of a Saul Alinsky rules for radical tactic. A very deceitful, disgusting thing. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying we have no idea who did it. And yet somehow it merits every news organization falsely, tenuously trying to say this is her fault, using vague language like maybe one of her supporters. What's that mean? And if it were someone who followed her online, that means nothing. We just looked, 3 million followers. Is she supposed to spend every day vetting every Twitter account that's following her to make sure there's not some bad person in there? How do you do that? I don't have a fraction of that. I've 40 something on Twitter. I can't. I'm not responsible for who follows me. I'm not even responsible for the people I choose to follow. I follow all kinds of interesting people. Half of them, I don't even see their posts anymore because I follow too many people. But I'm not responsible for what they say or think or do. And neither am I responsible for the people who follow me, what they say or think or do. She has never encouraged violence against anyone. She's simply effective at what she does, which is highlighting, throwing attention to the people's own videos and to, in this case, the books that are in the schools. Look at this book in the school. Oh, now I'm accused of a bomb threat. If you're on the left and you're part of this, you're part of this mob going for her, you think you know something about her or what she does or what she supports, like, you should be ashamed of yourself. It is deeply unethical. It is a lie to try and hang her on the actions of some anonymous person. We have no idea who they are when she's never supported or encouraged such behavior ever. And it's also it's that kind of fallacy where what they're attempting to do, the mainstream media all coming at her at once like this, is there's a couple things they're attempting to do. They're trying to scare her. They are actually doing the thing they're accusing her of doing, which is they are encouraging people to harass her. They are encouraging people to send her death threats and death wishes because they're saying she's a horrible, evil, right-wing extremist person. She's a terrorist. She's responsible for deaths and bomb threats. And, she is a terrible person. That's what they're putting out into the world. And so she is receiving these things. They're guilty of the very thing they're accusing her of. And unlike her, they justify it. I've got an article we're going to look at in a second where the media justified doxing her and revealing her identity. They justified doing that. I'm going to continue. Corville was not alone. Officers and government officials in 4 other jurisdictions, Burbank, California, Minnetonka, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and Oregon, told NBC News that they believe Raichik sparked threats at their localities with her posts on social media that digitally heckle people such as drag performers, LGBTQ teachers, and doctors who treat transgender patients. The name Libs of TikTok is a reference to the people that Raichik mocks on social media, libs being short for liberal. While the direct inspirations for the threats are not known. Oh, really? You don't actually know. You don't actually know what inspired these people or even who did it. You can't even say definitively that it wasn't a left-wing activist, which seems more likely. While the direct inspirations for the threats are not known, the timing suggests that Libs of TikTok posts have been used to pick targets. Really? This is some great detective work right there. Some great journalistic effort being put into this, right? Just a bunch of vague nonsense. I mean, it's basically NBC saying, this is what we guess, maybe, if we were to imagine possibly what we think could have happened. NBC News identified 33 instances starting in November 2020 when people or institutions singled out by Libs of TikTok. Again, what does that mean? She did a Twitter post about them? How many people have done Twitter posts about them? Are we not allowed to do Twitter posts about any school that's got porn in the library, about any teacher on TikTok who's indoctrinating their children? We're not supposed to talk. We can't post about it, right? That's somehow a sin. That's us singling them out by highlighting what they themselves have put into the world. Okay. When people or institutions singled out by Libs of TikTok later reported bomb threats or other violent intimidation, the threats, which on average came several days after tweets from Libs of TikTok, targeted schools, libraries, hospitals, small businesses, and elected officials in 16 states, Washington, D.C., and the Canadian province of Ontario. 21 of the 33 threats were bomb threats, which most commonly targeted schools and were made via email. Again, no information on who did it or their motivations, but, they're assuming. NBC News emailed Raichik on Monday seeking comment on the threats. This is just the height of arrogance. It's like, I'm casting aspersions on you. I'm accusing you of something that you have nothing to do with, that you have not done yourself or told people to do or encouraged or tried to justify. Something that you have specifically said is awful and wrong and evil. However she's phrased it, We're going to call you for comment on it, though. And we're going to try and force you to defend a negative, basically. It's that kind of fallacy where someone says, when did you stop beating your wife? There's an accusation baked into the question. There's an assumption or a presumption baked into the question itself. It's a loaded question. And then they get you in the territory of even arguing this thing that's fake, that they made up. This is a common dishonest tactic that they do. So they're basically, it's like calling her and saying, when did you stop beating your wife? They're like, what do you think about these people doing bomb threats because of you? What? Then you get in the territory of further, even by answering it, they want you to play the game. They want her to go on record and defend herself so they can have more headlines saying Libs of TikTok defends herself against accusations that she caused bomb threats. Now you've entertained the dishonest question, the dishonest accusation. You've entertained it. You've given it credence. You've acknowledged it. You've validated it. So she usually doesn't respond anymore, which is very smart. I wouldn't either, to evildoers who are trying to deceive and trying to entice her to play a game with them that only benefits their false caricature of her. She usually doesn't respond to the press. She knows their propaganda. So it says NBC News emailed Raichik on Monday seeking comment on the threats. She did not respond directly, but said in a post on X that NBC News was working on a, quote, hit piece. Yeah, because you were. Here it is. We're reading it. We're reading your hit piece. She was correct. Quote, they do it to try and paint me as an extremist to discredit me. This bomb threat narrative is getting really old, she wrote. NBC News identified the threats in a review of local news sources, social media posts, and interviews with experts and victims. You got all these experts and victims, and yet you have no evidence linking this to her in any way whatsoever. You can't even say who did it, or if they follow her, or even are aware of her. The 33 threats drew both local and national resources. Law enforcement agencies in at least 13 jurisdictions reported receiving FBI assistance to find the responsible person or people. A police spokesperson in Burbank said he believed the FBI still has an open investigation into an incident there. In an emailed statement, the Bureau said it has, in general, observed an increase in threats of violence targeting institutions like hospitals and schools. As a country and organization, we have seen an increase in threats of violence targeting government officials and institutions, houses of worship, schools, and medical facilities, just to name a few. The FBI and our partners take all threats of violence seriously, and responding to these threats ties up law enforcement resources, the FBI press office said. When the threats are made as a hoax, it puts innocent people at risk. It's a waste of law enforcement's limited resources, and it costs taxpayers. It does. It's a terrible, deceitful, evil, cowardly thing to do. To make a bomb threat. Full stop, of course. The FBI and our state and local partners will continue to aggressively pursue perpetrators of these threats, real or false, and hold them accountable, the Bureau said. Great. I wish you would do that instead of participating in hit pieces meant to turn Libs of TikTok founder Chaya Raichik into a target for more threats, for more violence. If you actually went out and did your job, instead of being a part of this propaganda campaign, that's generating more death threats. The FBI did not respond directly to questions about Raichik or the status of cases related to the 33 threats. Prosecutors have pursued charges in only 3 of the 33 instances. NBC News reviewed. At least 3 people have been charged with threatening Boston Children's Hospital or Boston doctors. Oh, was one of them Chaya? No. A juvenile was arrested after being accused of making a threat at an Oregon middle school, and 5 members of the white nationalist hate group Patriot Front were convicted of conspiring to riot at an Idaho Pride event. The charging documents associated with those prosecutions. Oh, they did not mention either Libs of Tik Tok or Chaya Raichik. Interesting. So you just wrote a whole hit piece about her, trying to link her to bomb threats with 0 evidence in the entire article. And then at the end, you conclude the hit piece by saying, well, yeah, with the ones that where we know who did it, doesn't mention her in the prosecutions. You could have made a headline that said Libs of Tik Tok founder Chaya Raichik not responsible for these 3 instances of bomb threats. Kevin Anderson, if you think you hate the press, you don't hate them enough. This is a common refrain of Chaya's lately, and I couldn't agree with her more. They're despicable. They are the enemy of the people, and they are particularly, if you are someone who has become very effective like Libs of TikTok has, with a lot of influence, with a large platform to show people what's happening in the schools, then they are more than just, the enemy of the people to you. They are your personal enemy. Super Based is here. Super Based just gifted 10 memberships. Thank you so much. Our little membership fairy is back. I appreciate it. Also, Super Based gave a super chat of $20. Thank you. Very generous. He says, my wife gave birth to our son, both healthy and happy. God is great. The fellowship has gained a new member and he is amazing. Thank you, Keri, for fighting to positively shape the soul of this nation for his future. Thank you. That is so kind, and I'm so happy for you. It's such a blessing. I don't know if this is your first, but congratulations either way. It makes me so happy to see good people having kids. I'm happy for you here. Everybody say congrats to Super Based. That's the real way you make a difference in the world, by the way. I know I've said this before, but I was talking with someone today who was asking me about advice on how to handle hateful people when you first start speaking out online. And it was making me think again about the ways in which I think we can each make a difference or in the world around us, especially if you're a person who sees the darkness around you. Like, how can you make a dent, right? And saying what you believe online is important because you never know who's watching that you could inspire. If you get past the fear of your words being taken out of context, or if you get past the fear of people having the wrong idea of you or saying untrue things about you or directing hate at you, if you get past that fear and you say what's true anyway from a place of love, I truly believe, I know this to be true, that you will find that people come to you later and say, you helped me to say what I think about things, seeing you do it. And that's happened to me both ways. I've also had people who I've come to them later and said that you helped me. And so it definitely makes a difference to, if you decide you want to be a person who does that online, who says what you think online, that's one way to change culture slowly, is everybody getting past the fear. It doesn't mean you don't have fear. It means, like my pastor said in the sermon yesterday, you don't let the fear control you. You control the fear. if you get past it and you start saying what you think online, that's one way to, chip away at the darkness. But I think a more important way is how you live, and raising kids, raising healthy kids, raising the next generation, and how you live around those kids, how you show them how to behave in the world, how you shape them. And I pray that I'm able to do that. And I think what you're doing is the best thing anyone could do. So, congratulations. It makes me very happy. Okay. Okay, so we looked at an article where they're accusing Libs of TikTok and Chaya Raichik of bomb threats. Now we're going to look at the recent one, the current firestorm that's happening. Let me show you this first. So if you do a quick news search, and then we're going to pull up a specific article, but if you do a quick news search for Libs of TikTok right now, this is what you're going to find. And this is usually the case. Sorry, I have to talk a little bit more slowly because these stitches, I'm trying to move too fast now. You will find article after article, and they will all be talking about the same thing. So sometimes it's bomb threats, um, or teachers being fired, and now it is currently this so-called non-binary student, this young girl who died in Oklahoma. Now, they're still investigating the cause of death for this student, and we'll read an article about it, but the basics are she was involved in an altercation with 3 other students. She said that she was in the bathroom with a friend, and that 3 other students, she heard one of them making fun of her or saying something about her laugh or the way she talks or something. And so she attacked them. She threw water on them, and they responded and beat her up. She was sent home from school, and the next day she passed away. And the media, now this is tragic that this young person has died, but what the media is doing with it, like they often do, is they're standing on her grave, and they're using her death to try and push an agenda and a narrative that we don't know yet if it's true. And there's no evidence yet to say that it's true, but headline after headline is saying that this quote non-binary student was killed because she's non-binary, because of being non-binary. We don't know that to be true. And to go further, they're saying she was killed because she's non-binary and because of Libs of TikTok targeting Oklahoma schools. It's Chaya Raichik's fault. There are journalists saying this, trying to put the death of this child on Chaya Raichik, because Chaya, a couple years ago, before this student even attended the school, Chaya featured a video of some teacher who taught there. So now, 2 years later, or what have you, this new student's death is somehow her fault. They're really trying to do this. What was the cause of death? They don't know, Shagsworth, and actually the last article I was reading about it said it was not the result of, uh, something said it wasn't the fault of the assault. But we'll read through it. I wanna get the language correct. I don't wanna just paraphrase because I don't wanna say the wrong thing. But they don't know yet. Okay. So if you look through the news articles, it's just headline after headline. Libs of TikTok has become a major presence in Oklahoma schools. Now, I have that one pulled up. We're going to look at it because look at how they start off. They start off right there with the propaganda. Far right activist. That's how they describe her. They're telling you what to think about her off the bat. Far right. Um, there's the article we looked at after Libs of TikTok posted. At least 21 bomb threats followed. Libs of TikTok under fire after non-binary Oklahoma student's death. Libs of TikTok exposed as ignorant hypocrite in viral video. Now here's one that I agree with. LGBT activists exploit a child's death to defame Libs of TikTok. That's exactly what's happening. Libs of TikTok founder calls 16-year-old's death tragic, but tells Taylor Lorenz that non-binary people shouldn't have access to, quote, gender-affirming care is the rest of that headline. Here's a USA Libs of TikTok tweets followed by bomb and death threats in 20 states. And it goes on and on. Hate influencer Chaya Raichik. Bomb threats. Oklahoma. Look at this one. Libs of TikTok targeted a district, and then a non-binary student was killed on campus. Again, because she did a tweet showing a video that a teacher made from this school district a couple years ago. She did this tweet. Now she's responsible for a death that happens years later. Why? Not sure. Libs of TikTok creator linked to bomb threats and is appointed to Oklahoma State Library Committee. Anyway, we could do that forever. There's just tons of headlines about it. Let's read one of these articles. This is the Washington Post, and this is by Taylor Lorenz. Let's do the history on this just quickly. So before we get into the non-binary student in Oklahoma and how they're blaming her death on Chaya and Libs of TikTok, let's back up for a second. For people who don't know the history, Taylor Lorenz is the journalist who doxed Libs of TikTok. She's the one who doxed. The real meaning of the word. A lot of people like to misuse that word today. A lot of liars and deceivers, they misuse it like they do a lot of words, and they'll use doxed, and you're like, well, what do you mean by that? And then you find out what they mean. You're like, well, that's not doxing. For example, Taylor Lorenz did a tearful interview on MSNBC where she claimed to have been doxed. And what she meant was, we came to find out, was that her name had been mentioned in a piece by Tucker Carlson. Well, your name is public. You weren't anonymous. You're a journalist. He was reporting on a story you did. He mentioned your name. That's not doxing. That's not doxing. So she tearfully did an interview, Taylor Lorenz did, with MSNBC, talking about all the abuse she had suffered as a result of being mentioned by Tucker Carlson. And I'm sure she did. I'm sure she got similar stuff to, what Chaya gets. But the great hypocrisy and irony here is that after she did that tearful MSNBC interview, she actually went on to dox Chaya Raichik. Nobody knew who ran Libs of TikTok. She wasn't a journalist like Taylor. Her name wasn't on anything. She had chosen to, some people choose to stay anonymous for obvious reasons, to protect themselves and their family from violent attacks, from threats, from harassment. And so she was anonymous, and this journalist doxed her. And then the media, the propaganda arm of woke, of social justice, they lined up to excuse the doxing and to do headlines and articles claiming that it wasn't doxing, that it's okay to dox. Here, I'm gonna play this for you. Let me jump to this just quickly. This is the video where Taylor Lorenz was crying on MSNBC, fake crying in my opinion, about having been mentioned in a Tucker Carlson piece and getting hate mail because of it. This is before she doxed Chaya, before she doxed Libs of TikTok. Let's watch this.
Journalist Taylor Lorenz is a columnist for The Washington Post and was targeted nearly 1 year ago in a segment on Fox News.
She's at the very top of journalism's repulsive little food chain.
After being targeted by two male media figures, researchers found that attacks against Lorenz went up as much as 144%.
Now, notice how they use the word targeting. Again, there's this breakdown in language and people misusing words. She was mentioned, yes. I guess you could use the word targeted, but they're not telling anybody to do anything to her. They're not doxing her. Her name is public record. She's a journalist. She puts her name on her pieces. They're talking about her pieces. They're criticizing them. And because she's high profile and they're high profile, that's the nature of being a person with a large platform. Of course, she got hate mail after that. But she wasn't doxed by them. And no one told anyone to attack her. But somehow this is, let's hear her feelings about it, some of which are justified.
After just one Twitter thread,
I've had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad. You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating and terrifying. It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
Harassment is a tool to silence people.
This is just amazing given what she did after this. It's amazing. She's like, I got hate mail. Okay, I'm going to go on to not only target, if we're using their language, target Libs of Tik Tok, but to out her identity and to dox her in the press. That's what she went on to do. Incredible, right?
Especially women and people of color or people from marginalized identities, for speaking out. And there's a very intentional goal behind it. It's obviously it's death threats and all of that and rape threats on the daily. And it's not just Twitter, it's every single surface, right? My cell phone number getting out there, people calling, people harassing my family members, stalking me, all of that is incredibly terrifying and invasive.
Again, look at what she tweeted here, given what she ended up doing. She said, if your segment or story on, quote, online harassment leads to even worse online harassment for your subjects, you effed up royally and should learn how to cover these things properly before ever talking about them again. Really? Because Taylor Lorenz went on to dox, to reveal the identity of Libs of Tik Tok, to stalk her, to go to her house, her mom's house, to put her name out there, and which led to a lot of online harassment for her. So it's like, I don't get people who say one thing and behave another way. I do get it. I've met lots of these kind of people. I've met lots of con artists. I've met lots of liars, people with cluster B personality disorders, people who think anything goes in terms of tactics, just deceitful, horrible people. I've met a lot of them. What I don't get is how people don't see through it, how everyone doesn't see through it immediately. How does she even continue to write for the Washington Post when you've behaved this way?
What I'm doing is very effective, and I think that a lot of people wanted to shut me down. They wanted to intimidate me into silence. And unfortunately for them, that's just never going to happen.
Were you a little surprised to see, of all people, Taylor Lorenz, who complained bitterly when we used her name on the air several months ago, who whined and cried on television because she had PTSD because people were criticizing her online? Were you surprised that it was her who came after you personally and tried to destroy your life?
Yeah, I thought that was really humorous. It added a really nice layer of humor on top of the whole story.
How has this affected your life, this Jeff Bezos piece?
Well, the past 2 days have been very chaotic and overwhelming. I had to make some travel plans, really fast, but I was not planning on earlier. So there was a little bit of coordination that had to happen. And I'm now in a location where I don't think anyone would find me, not in any of the locations that Taylor Lorenz leaked or that anyone can find. But it's been a little bit tough, but I'm not going to let this get me down.
Okay. That was Chaya on Tucker Carlson after Taylor Lorenz had doxed her. And here's the article. We're gonna bring up this article from 2022 just to get, again, a little bit more of the background on this. This is the article by Taylor Lorenz in the Washington Post. They ran this. They allowed this to happen. They allowed for this doxing of a private person. The headline, Meet the Woman Behind Libs of TikTok, Secretly Fueling the Rights Outrage Machine. And then the subtitle is, A Popular Twitter account has morphed into a social media phenomenon spreading anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment and shaping public discourse. On March 8th, a Twitter account called Libs of TikTok posted a video of a woman teaching sex education to children in Kentucky, calling the woman in the video a predator. That's her opinion, by the way. I don't know. I probably saw this video at the time. I don't know offhand now which one it is, but I probably agreed with her at the time. You're allowed to have an opinion about whether a teacher being inappropriate in the classroom with kids is a predator or not. You're allowed to do that. Calling the woman in the video a predator. The next evening, the same clip was featured on Laura Ingraham's Fox News program, prompting the host to ask, quote, when did our public schools, any schools, become what are essentially grooming centers for gender identity radicals? Perfectly good question to ask, given all the stuff we're seeing from these teachers. Libs of TikTok reposts a steady stream of TikTok videos and social media posts, primarily from LGBTQ plus people, often including incendiary framing designed to generate outrage. You don't even have the videos themselves are outrage worthy. Many of these videos themselves, what they're bragging about doing in the classroom. Videos shared from the account quickly find their way to the most influential names in right-wing media. The account has emerged as a powerful force on the internet, shaping right-wing media, impacting anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, and influencing millions by posting viral videos aimed at inciting outrage among the right. The anonymous account's impact is deep and far-reaching. Its content is amplified by high-profile media figures, politicians, and right-wing influencers. Its tweets reach millions, with influence spreading far beyond its 648,000 Twitter followers. So 2 years ago, Libs of TikTok wasn't quite at 1 million. Now she's almost at 3. Libs of TikTok has become an agenda setter in right-wing online discourse, and the content it surfaces shows a direct correlation with the recent push in legislation and rhetoric directly targeting the LGBTQ plus. What legislation is that? What legislation is targeting people just for being gay? I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of any legislation that's like, you can't be gay. This is a lie. What they usually mean by that is legislation aimed at protecting children from so-called gender-affirming care, saying, hey, guess what? You need to be an adult before you can decide to sterilize yourself or cut your breasts or wiener off, to pardon my language. That's not targeting people for being LGBTQ. That's protecting children from lifelong medical decisions that they're not capable of making. We also, in our law, protect children from having sex with adults or from drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes or getting tattoos or driving cars. There's nothing new about this. What's new is suddenly crazy people saying, yeah, sure, my 7-year-old has the capability of deciding if they want to take sterilizing hormones or cut their breasts off. They hide all of that in a vague phrase like this: legislation and rhetoric directly targeting LGBTQ people. That's not what it is. It's just how they lie in their vague language about banning books. Quote, Libs of TikTok is basically acting as a wire service for the broader right-wing media ecosystem, says Ari Drennan, LGBTQ program director for Media Matters. Oh my gosh. Let's move on. I don't want to read anything by Media Matters. So here she goes. Here she outs her. Nobody knew who was running Libs of TikTok. Her name was not public. She purposefully was anonymous to protect herself and her family. And here in this Washington Post article, Taylor Lorenz doxes her. This is the real definition of doxing. She outs her name, and you'll see she goes on to out other personal identifying information, including where she lives. She does this in the Washington Post with full approval and support and justification from other media outlets after the fact. This is the same woman we just saw fake crying about how her name, which was not anonymous, which was not hidden, that her name being mentioned in another news piece caused her to have PTSD and that you shouldn't harass people. And then she does this. She says, Chaya Raichik, she used her name, that's where it first came out. Chaya Raichik had been working as a real estate salesperson in Brooklyn when in early November 2020, she created the account that would eventually become Libs of TikTok. Under her first handle, and then she puts her first Twitter handle there, she I'm putting this in quotes because this is the way Taylor is phrasing it. She minimized COVID. She cast doubt on the election results and promoted a dubious story about a child trafficking ring. Excuse me if I don't take your word on any of those things. On November 23rd, Raichik changed handles, this time going by this other Twitter handle and identifying herself publicly as a real estate investor in Brooklyn. She began doubling down on election fraud conspiracies using QAnon-related language. Okay. Again, this is propaganda. I don't know what language she was using, but they certainly want you to leave this article going, oh my God, QAnon. Another dubious connection. Oh, she's somehow related to QAnon now. Early that December, she joked about launching a clothing line titled Voter Fraud is Real. In January 2021, Raichik started talking about traveling to D.C. to support Trump on January 6th at the Stop the Steal rally. When violence broke out at the Capitol that day, she tweeted a play-by-play account claiming to be on the ground. They were rubber bullets from law enforcement. One hit right next to me, she said. She posted videos from the crowd and spoke of tear gas being deployed nearby. After saying that she left the riot, she used Twitter to downplay the event, claiming it was peaceful compared to a BLM protest. It was peaceful compared to a BLM protest. Do you know how many people have died at BLM protests? Later that month, Raichik cycled through two more Twitter names, this time focusing on state politicians, first under the handle Chaya Raichik and the display name. So she was using her name at some point before she created Libs of TikTok, right? So she goes on to talk about this, how she linked her and found out. This is basically her revealing how she doxed this person. This is how I found out who she is, right? She had a parody account, and that was called Houseplant POTUS, pretending to be a houseplant living with President Biden. That sounds pretty funny. The parody account didn't take off. Then she created, in April 2021, she created Libs of TikTok. Just 4 months after getting started, Libs of TikTok got its big break. Joe Rogan started promoting the account to millions of listeners on his podcast. He mentioned it several times on the show in August, again in September. Joe Rogan said, quote, Libs of TikTok is one of the greatest effing accounts of all time. He's not wrong. With his seal of approval, Raichik's following skyrocketed. What she does with this account is brilliant. It's hyper focused. You know, some people are like my online presence. I just post it. I don't follow a formula or an algorithm. I can't. I don't want to. But I know people who do, and there are pros and cons to doing that, I think. But one of the pros of doing that is some people are very hyper focused on one issue. They have one goal, and the accounts are very valuable for that issue and that goal. And, you know, I tend to just post about whatever I'm thinking about at the time. It's more scatterbrained. Like, here's something I'm thinking about in regards to ideology or my podcast, or here's my dog barking at the mailman. Now, you're not supposed to tweet like that, I've been told. I've been told if I want to grow my Twitter account, I need to just be hyper focused, but I can't do that. I can't live a life like that. I don't know how you have balance and downtime. And I don't know, like, for people following along, it's like, that's not me. I'm not always on the attack bad ideology mode, I think life is a balance. So that's how I tweet. But the point being, the accounts that do get hyper focused, they have a goal and they're like, this is what I'm doing. She is one of the ones that's a great example of becoming very effective. Her account is very influential, not just because there's a little kismet there, a little good luck happening with Rogan retweeting it that they mention, but it's not just because of Rogan. It doesn't matter what Rogan promotes. If it's not a good or effective account, it's not going to take off. The account is effective. It's focused. She goes and gets the videos, puts them up, shows you what's happening. So it says her following skyrocketed, yeah, and it deserved to skyrocket. Libs of TikTok gained more prominence throughout the end of last year, cementing its spot in the right-wing media outrage cycle. Its attacks on the LGBTQ plus community also escalated. By January, Raichik's page was leaning hard into, quote, groomer discourse, calling for any teacher who comes out as gay to their students to be, quote, fired on the spot. I would want to see why didn't you give us the exact language there, Taylor? I'm immediately suspicious when you crop quotes like that. Why didn't you put her full quote in there? Because I want to see it. Why hide it? I happen to agree, though, if that is what she said. Yes. Any teacher who comes out as gay to their student, it's inappropriate in the classroom. It's not up for the teacher to decide that this is somehow moral instruction that they have a right to push on children. So she goes on to just continue attacking Libs of TikTok, but now she's named her, she's identified her. It just it just goes on and on. So there were several articles that she did after this. She's still writing for the Washington Post. And she's not the only journalist by any stretch of the imagination who has, to use their word, targeted Libs of TikTok. It's constant now. It's just that Taylor Lorenz's history with it and being the person who doxed her makes it the most crazy, in my opinion. We're going to look at a recent article now. I'll take just a quick break to say thank you to Pupta for the super chat for $9.99. Pupta says, it's important to remember that when you're talking about Tay-Tay, the word I forgot that they call Taylor Lorenz Tay-Tay. I'm not up on all the lingo, Pupta. It's important to remember that when you're talking about Tay-Tay, the word journalist goes in quotes like this. Alleged journalist Taylor Lorenz. Thank you very much for that super chat. Thank you for the giggle. Davina says, I'd like to use the outrage machine. Thank you, Kevin. No teacher should be bringing up their sex life. Nobody should be having a coming out conversation. A coming out conversation is different than, I guess, having a picture of your spouse or something in the classroom or on your desk. I don't know. I don't find that to be a problem as much as like, hey kids, I'm going to come out to you. Yeah, why? I want to show you this first. So after Taylor Lorenz doxed Chaya Raichik, doxed Libs of TikTok, the media rushed to defend it. They all started publishing her name. They all jumped on the bandwagon. This is an actual headline from NBC News. Is this one showing up on the screen? Yeah. Look at this headline. There's a proper term for what happened to the Libs of TikTok creator. It's not doxing. What? Really? You revealed an anonymous citizen's name online in the media. You doxed her. You told everyone who she is, where she lives, everything. That's not doxing? Really? That is exactly the definition of doxing. Oh, but no, look, in the social justice cult where they rename words and they come up with new words and they try to control thought and speech, they say don't call it doxing, even though don't call it doxing. Here they say, look at the subtitle. The correct word is accountability. Oh, okay. So it's not doxing if you think they deserve it. That's what NBC News is arguing. Does that work both ways? If someone on the right, someone you don't like, doxes someone, is it okay if we think they deserved it, or is it accountability? Or does that just go the other direction? NBC News published this. It's not doxing, it's accountability. And then here's the justification. And someone targeting others in a hateful way while cowering behind a screen shouldn't be allowed to avoid it. Targeting, again with that word, she's reposting their videos that they posted publicly. I'm just going to read the very beginning. Look, this is by Keri Aliamo, another woman arguing why doxing's okay. On Tuesday, Washington Post internet culture reporter Taylor Lorenz came under fire for revealing the identity of a woman who has been cowering behind her computer screen to share anti-LGBTQ content anonymously. The woman, Chaya Raichik, is, according to the Post, responsible for Libs of TikTok. Now look at this. There are many reasons it's inappropriate to publicly expose a person's private information, a practice known in internet parlance as doxing. But this isn't one of them. Really? Because that's what happened. Her private information was publicly exposed, known as doxing. So she's saying here, doxing is inappropriate. There's many reasons why it's inappropriate, but in this case, it's not inappropriate. This isn't one of them, she says. In this case, doxing is appropriate. So which is it? At the beginning, you're saying it's not doxing, it's accountability. You're saying it's not doxing, it's accountability. Now you're saying it is doxing, but it's appropriate to do here. She continues, let me be clear. Doxing can be dangerous or even deadly. Yeah, it can. There are many people who should be able to share information anonymously online, but not Libs of TikTok. Really? For example, to document their experiences as transgender people. Oh, okay. That's when it's okay. If they fear discrimination or even violence for openly sharing their identities. What if they fear discrimination or even violence for openly sharing the deranged videos of groomer teachers? Exposing such people can put their safety in danger, and it's never acceptable to share people's private contact information online, like their phone numbers or email addresses, since this could be used to harass them in real life. But there's no justifiable reason to protect the identity of someone like Chaya Raichik on social media. So why? So she can spread this kind of intolerance with impunity. That's your subjective opinion of what she's doing. Does it go both ways? Does my subjective opinion of what you're doing here at NBC News, which is propaganda, intolerant propaganda, does that allow me justification to do things that otherwise I say are otherwise bad? You're a hypocrite. You stand for nothing. You have no principles, only ideology. Okay, now we're getting to the Oklahoma situation. This is another Taylor Lorenz piece in the Washington Post from 2 days ago. Headline: How Libs of TikTok Became a Powerful Presence in Oklahoma Schools. Subtitle: The owner of the far-right social media account, who sits on a state advisory panel, has drawn attention since the death of a non-binary student near Tulsa. Now, this is funny. One of the things I really admire about Chaya Raichik is, first of all, when she was outed, when she was doxxed, she could have let it overwhelm her. She could have tucked her tail, gone offline. She stayed. She created her own separate Twitter account under her name. So now she has her personal Twitter and she has her Libs of TikTok account, and she leaned into it. And I think you may not always agree with everything she says or does, and you shouldn't. We're all individuals. But in general, on the whole, the way she's handled the unbelievable focus, attention, targeting by the propaganda machine, by the media, the way she's handled the unfathomable amount of hate mail, death threats, death wishes that she's gotten, I think has been with an amazing degree of grace, humor. She's maintained her sense of humor and joy, and I love to see that, and I admire her for it. And she's got a bit of the comedian in her, a bit of the troll. And so when she sat down to do this in-person interview with Taylor Lorenz this week, the person who doxed her, she sat down to do the interview with her. She screen printed a picture of Taylor Lorenz fake crying from that MSNBC clip that we watched, and she wore it on her t-shirt. Do you see this? Now, the left-wing media, the propagandists, they're all like having a field day with this. They're like, how hateful and extremist of her to do, how to mock Taylor in this interview. Oh, how dare she print out this picture of Taylor crying and put it on her shirt for the interview. Yes, Kevin, epic troll. They have no sense of humor. These people have no sense of humor. They're joy eaters. If a person doxed me and my family to the degree that Taylor Lorenz did to her in the national press, she outed her where she lived, made her family the subject of harassment campaigns, rightly caused them to fear for their privacy and safety in the time immediately following that. And instead of coming back with malice, she comes back when he sits down with the woman who did this evil to her, is she just puts a funny, a mocking picture of her crying on a shirt. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's hurting my stitches. This is just beautiful. Even if someone did something like this to me, I hope I would be able to laugh at this. I would be like, touche. Touche, hats off, well done, sir. It's just, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I'll fight you naked. That's beautiful, man. I'd buy that shirt. Absolutely. This is just a silly, funny troll, and they are going bonkers over it. Like, this is the worst thing ever done. Forget that Taylor doxed her and her family and threatened her safety. Forget that happened in the national news. Who cares about that, right? They did articles saying it's cool, it's justified, it's not really doxing, or it is, but it's justified. That they defended that. But she shows up with a t-shirt with the face of the woman who doxed her on it, crying, and that's like, oh, how dare you? That's terrible, right? Overreacting, hysterical about it. Yeah. Classic troll. Okay, so if you haven't seen clips of this interview where they sat down, it's kind of hilarious. And Taylor Lorenz is wearing a mask the whole time outside. She looks ridiculous. She's not aware of many things she's talking or asking about. She says crazy stuff. Like it basically it's everything that's wrong with the woke cult in wrapped up in one person. She's got the mask on. She's talking about how it's beautiful in Miami, but because of climate change, it's not going to be beautiful there for long. Like, what? She says things like this just sort of casually. She's asking Libs of TikTok Chaya Raichik about banning books, and Chaya's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not trying to ban books," because she's not. That's a lie. We're trying to remove sexually inappropriate material from the public school library, and she's not even aware of what's in these books, because at some point Chaya shows her on her phone. She's like, "This is a blowjob," and it's like Taylor's never even seen the images from these books that she's so concerned about. So go and watch clips of it. What's also funny, and someone pointed out online, was right after or right before this interview, where Taylor Lorenz is wearing the mask outside, it's completely performative. It's completely fake, because inside she was taking a photo with Rosie O'Donnell, Dylan Mulvaney, uh, Kathy Griffin, several other, leftist propaganda celebrity mouthpieces, and they're all inside together in a group for the photo, and none of them are wearing masks, including Taylor Lorenz. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Isn't that weird? Not really, when you find out when you realize what a liar, what a hypocrite this person is, and every step of the way, from crying about being harassed and then doxing Libs of TikTok, to doing an interview outside with her in a mask and then going inside and taking the mask off for a close group photo with a bunch of leftist celebrities. Anyway, that was just as an aside. I thought that was wild. Okay. We're going to read a little bit of this piece. So there's the picture. Here's Taylor's piece. Far-right activist Chaya Raichik, again, right there off the bat, telling you what to think about her, describing her as far-right, describing her as an activist. Far-right activist Chaya Raichik splits her time between California, where she's registered to vote, and Florida, where she often travels. But the place where she arguably is having the biggest impact these days is Oklahoma, a state she's visited only once. Raichik, who operates the social media account Libs of TikTok, has amassed an audience of millions on X. Journalistic integrity, I think, should have required you to say here, Raichik, who used to anonymously run the social media account Libs of TikTok until I doxed her in this previous article here, you should put that in there. So it says that she has amassed a following of millions on X, largely by targeting LGBTQ plus people. Last month, Raichik was appointed to the Oklahoma Library Media Advisory Committee by Republican School Superintendent Ryan Walters, a former history teacher who has been called, quote, the state's top culture warrior, for his opposition to teachers' unions and other conservative targets, including LGBTQ plus students' rights. The way that she goes after this guy, Ryan Walters, and attacks him, I don't know anything about this guy, but sounds like he's probably doing some good. Since her appointment, Raichik has sought to pull books depicting gay and transgender people as well as sex education from public school libraries, saying she has found, quote, porn in various districts. She has. We've looked at the books. Why haven't you, Taylor? Why did she have to show you a BJ in one of these books? Her to this death. Since this girl, Nex, her name was Nex Benedict, a 16-year-old non-binary student, collapsed and died the day after a February 7th fight in a girl's bathroom in Owassa High School in suburban Tulsa. Family members said that Benedict had been bullied for months for being openly non-binary. She doesn't put non-binary in quotes, but I will. Owassa Police Lieutenant Nick Boatman said Friday that Benedict did not die. This is the answer to your question, Shagsworth, earlier. The police said that Benedict did not die as a result of physical trauma. according to preliminary information from the medical examiner, and that the department is still awaiting the results of toxicology testing to determine the cause of death. But none of that has stopped the Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz, and the rest of the propaganda media from first saying this death was as a result of the fight, which we don't know. Second, that it was because she was non-binary, which we don't know. And third, that this is all the fault somehow of Libs of Tik Tok and Chaya Raichik. Benedict's parents have questioned that conclusion. Meanwhile, gay rights supporters in Oklahoma and elsewhere have continued to blame the fight for Benedict's death and to accuse Raichik of bearing some responsibility for the fight. How, you might ask? Because a couple years ago, she tweeted a video made by a teacher at the school before this student, Bex, ever went to this school. Then somehow this is her fault. Okay. On Thursday, Oklahoma City Councilor Sean Cummings, Democrat, lambasted Raichik for stoking anti-LGBTQ hatred in the state, saying that she has, quote, blood on her hands, end quote. Blood on her hands. And Matt Bernstein, a 25-year-old LGBTQ plus content creator in New York, who has been targeted by Raichik. Targeted, I guess that means Libs of Tik Tok gave one of his videos greater exposure. He said, I'm just hearing constantly how Chaya Raichik specifically has caused a rift in the experience of being a queer high schooler in America. Really? Chaya Raichik specifically has done this. Just like that first histrionic video we watched from Fuzzy, the substitute teacher who just got fired and said she was hate crimed. This person, Taylor Lorenz, the Washington Post, they're all personalizing it. They're picking one specific target. They're isolating. They're freezing that target. They're trying to put everything at the feet of Chaya Raichik. I'm going to pull up something here. Many of you are already familiar with The Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. I'm just going to refresh our memory on one of these rules. This is basically a guidebook for dishonest, dark-hearted, leftist radicals and activists. Rules for radicals, it says. This is rule number 11. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. Don't try to attack abstract corporations or bureaucracies. Identify a responsible individual. One person. Ignore attempts to shift or spread the blame. This is what they're doing to Libs of Tik Tok right now. And they've done it to many other commentators, athletes, parents who have been effective. They're doing it to Moms for Liberty. They've done it to Tiffany Justice. They've done it to Billboard Chris. You can rattle off a list of people they've done it to. And they're currently doing this to Chaya Raichik. Identify a responsible individual. Okay, so that's the part where they say Chaya Raichik specifically is responsible for this. I'm not going to read the rest of this article right now. You can go and read it yourself. There are tons of these articles. Here's another one I had pulled up. We don't have to read it, but the Oklahoman headline: as Owasso student dies after school beating, critics blame negativity from Libs of Tik Tok. And you just see article after article, journalist after journalist saying that Libs of Tik Tok has blood on their hands, that Chaya Raichik personally is responsible for this death. Again, a death where we don't even have the cause of death yet. And we also don't have the motive yet. And even if we did, Libs of Tik Tok has nothing to do with this. I want to show you what's happening to Chaya Raichik online. So, you know, Taylor Lorenz was crying in that clip about hate mail. I cannot imagine. I get hate mail, but it's nothing on the scale that it must be for someone with 3 million followers, someone who has the impact that Libs of Tik Tok has had. I cannot imagine how she has grown to be able to deal with it, to let it slide off her back, to make jokes about it, you know, or sometimes to call it out, which she started doing this week. And I don't blame her for it. Here she says, very small sample of some of my direct messages today. I got about 24 death threats after the media and activists repeated a libel about me. This is after the media and activists said she's responsible for this non-binary student's death. She says, this means the media are stochastic terrorists. I didn't make the rules. Again, she's maintaining her sense of humor because they've called her a stochastic terrorist. They've done this in headlines. They've called her a terrorist. And she's rightly pointing out their hypocrisy. Look at her DMs. How does it feel to be responsible for a child's murder? Here's another one. Your life will be extinguished soon, and I truly hope you suffer every bit. Here's another one. Piece of shit. Here's another. Say whatever you want, Chaya. People have died because of you. Here's another. Did that scare you? I guess they sent her a hateful thing before that. Here's another. You deserve to die. Here's another. You're vile. Another. Outstanding work on getting a teen killed. You disgusting cunt. You are a useless piece of shit. Here's another. God, I hope they succeed. You disgusting domestic terrorist, vile cunt. This just goes on and on and on. And she started posting, which I think is fully within her right, some of this hate mail and asking who's behind these accounts for the ones making threats. I haven't done this before. I don't get enough where I feel like it's necessary to make an example of them. I usually will ignore it or make a joke about it later. She gets so much hate mail, and some of them are death threats. And if you were getting that much hate mail and death threats, it might be worth it to call attention to a few of the worst and say, look at this. Who is this? FBI, could you help me find out who's sending this death threat? Right? She started posting a few of them. I really hope you get hanged in front of your family and in public. Nothing would feel better than your worthless, pathetic life drain from eyes. This person can't spell well, first of all. Probably went to a public school. She says, here's a psycho saying, I hope he gets hanged in public. Anyone know where he works or goes to school? DM me. And it's just posts after posts of people wishing or threatening death upon her. Sorry, I had another tab open. It started making noise, but I think only I could hear it. So I shut that one down. We don't need to look through more of it. It's like looking into the darkness of people. That's what hate mail is. If you read a lot of it back to back, you're like, it's just looking into the chasm, of projection, of people putting their worst qualities, the worst things about themselves, their hatred, um, their, their vile nature, and putting it on you, putting it on her, trying to say she is those things. When again, to the naked eye, we can see what you're writing. It is you. We can see the darkness of your heart. We can see what you are. Some people apparently can't. Some people are walking around blind, not using the eyes that God gave them. But for people with their eyes open, we can see the darkness in you. And we don't need to read a lot more of it. But that's what she's dealing with right now. And so she's getting death. This is just a whole full circle thing. The media is complicit in this. The journalists are complicit in this. They are targeting her, to use their word. They are posting dishonest, unethical headlines trying to blame her for the death of this non-binary student, blame her for terrorism, blame her for bomb threats, all of this unethical. After they doxed her, after they're the ones that put her personal information out there. A lot of the hate mail she's getting, you can see in these idiots' messages, they're repeating the stuff they've heard from the propaganda machine. You're a murderer. You're a terrorist. You are responsible for bomb threats. They're repeating these lies. They're calling her the things they've been told to call her. And I think this is done, obviously, to try to intimidate her, get her to shut up and go offline and quit being effective at exposing this ideology in the schools. They're trying to get her to go away, or I don't think they would care a bit. I think that we would see disgusting celebratory posts from them if somebody committed violence against her. They don't care if that happens. They're trying to make her a public enemy. They're doing Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, rule number 11, personalizing it, putting it all on an individual. Let's take that effective individual out however we have to. That's what they're doing. And then the other goals, aside from trying to intimidate her, shut her up, harass her, make her life a living hell, torment her, put her life in danger, aside from all that, they're making an example of her. They want people like you and me and everyone else to see that. And they want our fear of something like that ever happening to us to constrain us, to turn us into cowards, to allow fear to control us. They're making an example of her. I am going to start highlighting her posts more. I've had Libs of Tik Tok on my feed. Like I said, I don't always see everybody I follow. I don't know how the algorithm works, but I've made a point to go to her personal profile and to Libs of Tik Tok directly the past few days, read more of her content, post more of her videos. I'm going to use my little big mouth to support what she's doing because I'm grateful for her. I'm grateful for people like her. And I'm, like I said, in awe of the grace and the sense of humor that she has shown being in this position. I cannot even imagine what that feels like. If you are a praying person, say a prayer for her and her family, a prayer of protection for her. I worry for her, but I also hope she doesn't stop. And I love that she's leaned into it. And I love that she's just like, okay, you outed me. I'm just going to keep going. And I'm going to start tweeting into my real name too. So good for her. Little Big Mouth is a cute name. Maybe I'll take that as my new moniker, Little Big Mouth. La Familia says, that's all she's doing is highlighting things people have said publicly. Yeah, that's all she's doing. And she's very effective at it. She's highly focused. And so they hate her for it because she's right over the target. She's doing a great job of shedding light on darkness. They don't want the light on them. I'm going to wrap this up. I've talked a lot, and I'm irritating these stitches that I got. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Take a break from talking the rest of the day, which is hard for a little big mouth. And I appreciate you guys hanging out and walking through this with me. If you have suggestions for things I can talk about, if you have questions, if you have critiques, feel free to leave them below in the comments. If you have questions for book club, like I said, coming up on March 7th, we're going to be discussing Critical Dilemma by Neil Shenvi and Pat Sawyer. If you have questions for them, you can leave those questions also below in the comments. And I'm going to be interviewing them later this week for release sometime around the time of our discussion. So let me know. Great show. Oh, thank you. Get some rest. Yeah. Thank you. You guys too. Get some rest this evening. Kendra says cockroaches go scurrying with the light. Yes. That's what's happening is she's shining the light on them. Okay, I forgot to play my intro music at the beginning. We're not going to forget to play it at the end, though. Here we go. Thanks, you guys, for hanging out. If you like the show, please consider hitting like or subscribing to the channel if you're new here, or if you want to support the show, you can do so here on YouTube by becoming a member or at Locals, Patreon, or Subscribestar. Also, I have a Substack. It's free. All the essays are free. It's for different. And today I wrote a piece I've been thinking about for a while about prayer. So if you're interested in that and in reading some essays, you can find it at kerismith.substack.com. Okay, thanks, guys. Bye. Hey, surprise, I'm still here. I have to say I'm sorry to I'll Fight You Naked. I just saw your super chats. I saw you saying, am I blocked as I was clicking out? You're not blocked. I just missed them. I didn't see them. I apologize. Thank you for the super chat for the $2. He's talking about the mask that Taylor Lorenz was wearing just for the interview outside, not when she went inside to take photos with celebrities, right? He says the mask is used to suggest nearby infection. It is. It's a good psychological prop, right? And then also $2. Oh, you didn't have to do that in a super chat. I apologize. Am I blocked? You are not blocked, sir. That was me missing something at the end. And then also Cheeky Mayor had put the link here if you want to get the book Critical Dilemma in time for our book club. Delay. Oops. Okay. LOL. Hi. Yeah. It's funny when if the credits end and I'm still like, hi. Okay, now I'm leaving for real. See you guys later. Have a good rest of your Monday. Bye.